So I was thinking about art, um, and what it means for something to be art. I don't have anything against art, creativity, absolutely the opposite, really. I just I take issue with how people treat art, because everybody wants to. They know that it's the subjective thing, but yet they want to treat it as objective. It's a weird sort of contradiction that happens in almost everyone's head, once they get into it. And there's a lot of reasons that that's sort of becoming more of an issue. AI, of course, and is something AI, art if it's made by AI, this, that, and the other. And I've gone back and forth on that matter for specific reasons we're going to get into. You can hate it or love it, or just understand it. And that's really what I'm trying to get to here. So, my position on what art is from the beginning. Art came about from people trying to understand the world around them. There was unknowns, and that, coupled with a plethora of other factors, um, led to imagination. I don't know, I'm not going to pretend to know all of the variables or the strongest variables in this, but I do believe that death has a big part to play in that. With our capabilities and being able to stay alive and increase our longevity and our quality of life through different means. That's probably another factor is overcoming challenges with our anatomy and being resourceful to meet certain ends. And so art is very much tied into necessities in a way. I would say, which I guess in that sense does give it more validity in my mind. Where I was going to describe it, and will describe it as people. It's like a maybe I don't want to call it vestigial because that almost implies that it doesn't have like a use, like a practical use nowadays. And I guess it's more limited, right? Our imagination and what challenges we overcome is less important to our survival now. And there's less of those critical challenges to overcome through our imagination. But yeah, I kind of started looking at it in these terms because of this whole AI thing and trying to understand what art is. I think, for example, even depictions of gods and whatnot, like Greek philosophy or mythology, but yeah, Greek mythological lore and all of that. It's still, and anything that came prior, really, it's all based on the world around us, And I'm not a believer in the world as a creative work. At least, I would be willing to accept that as a possibility, but as it stands, don't possess the evidence and don't care to seek the answer to that further because of the limitations on the life I'm aware of and so on. So that said, um, and the fact that it doesn't impact my life in any meaningful way to have the answer or not. in those regards. That's kind of where, this discussion on simulation theory and all of that, it's meaningless to me because it doesn't change life as I know it from this perspective. It could be a good philosophical exercise, but it doesn't change my life in any meaningful way from the relative perspective that I have. So, when they depict these gods, it's based on us. We look at ourselves. That's how they end up being depicted in a lot of cases. Now there can be even variations. Like I guess I haven't seen the depictions of the angels from the Bible, but from my understanding, there's like a lot of eyeballs going on. I guess there might be some wings or feathers or whatnot. Uh, some creepy stuff, but still based on things that we know of this, that we could have perceived, prior to, and landscapes, photography. It's all born of what we've already known. And my point in mentioning those things, I'm sure some have picked up on that already, is um, art by nature is derivative, and it uses variables that are present in the reality. It's from its conception. That's how it's worked, and we can alter the colors and the shapes and all of these things, and even make fantastic things that have never been seen before. But I do believe it all originated there. Even branching out from that originated there, as art became more illustrative and less about overcoming challenges or and more communicative. People wanted to be more unique in their form. So even the desire for that difference, which we could even tie that unique form into uh, biological diversity and the drives that come from that, and spread into other facets of our life. We wouldn't notice all of these things right off the bat or tie them into something that seems so disconnected from its origin. But that is how I see it, and you could make an argument, but that says otherwise. But you would have to, at that point, just say, well, art just is, and that's that. There's no rhyme or reason. And if that's really the position you're going to take, simply so that you could say that whatever is generated, by a machine can't be called art, then it's harder for me to take you seriously. And I get it. There is like a separation between the a machine could not understand, at least as it stands, the challenges that humans have to overcome on a day-to-day basis that form inspiration in us. It's these challenges, the ups and downs, everything that we experience to our core is going into that final creation. Um, even somebody, you could make the argument, even somebody who is just trying to game the human algorithm, the psychology, if you believe in psychology. Um, Even people who are trying to take advantage of that concept and produce their art based on that, so they can get the most eyeballs on it. Even that is rooted in that core human experience. And all that said, AI, I think, is yet another extension. Um, Unless you want to take the position that AI is a separate entity, you would have to look at it as a tool. Sure, we couldn't ascribe a creation of AI to the person that made AI, but I would ascribe it to humanity because it is a result of humanity. It didn't come from anything outside of us, and don't believe people that try to convince you that it's some otherworldly thing. They don't want to let go of a preconception of what art is, should be, can be. And I don't like to admit that either, because there's a part of me that's like, that's it. Just I don't value. I will say that this value is subjective. You can value it different, but as far as art and its origins, its progression, the entire evolution of art, if we're looking at it for its purely for its communicative properties, then okay, then if we said simply put, art is communication. It's nothing else, can't be anything else, and we agreed broadly as a society that that is the case. Then I'll say, okay, well, as it stands, AI can't be art, or can it? I also hold the position that everything is communication. Um, Even down to basic like principles of physics, which I'm not gonna pretend to be a fucking scientist or a physicist, or, none of that stuff. Maybe a scientist by some definition, but uh, even down to that level, when energy gets transferred, from one body to the next, from one mass to the next, that is communication to me. It's not intentful, as far as we know, but um, it serves the same end, right? There was an exchange that took place there. Both individual bodies walked away with new information, even if they didn't have legs or multiple cells or were more than basic particles. There's communication there. Um, and I think that everything in our existence is built on that communication. So if you're willing to take that definition, then you would say, okay, I guess AI can be art. Um, or are you an individualist? I believe individualism is important to a degree. I think I personally I like my individuality. I don't particularly enjoy the idea of a hive mind, but I think that there's a lot of areas where there could be more connectivity. Um, this is why I take issue with people who have a problem with the internet. Now, interests and incentive structures, that I can get with. I do believe that wholeheartedly, that these incentive structures are what are causing a lot of the issues behind how technology is used and how it affects the body of a larger organism. We are small parts of a larger organism, and that that is not to say, you can be a good person and a lot of bad things can happen in your body. You know what I mean? Um, and on from the perspective of, your um, was it the white blood cells fighting off an infection or virus? That is the most important thing that could be going on. It doesn't really know that it's serving a greater purpose from our perspective, collective perspective at that point. It's not even aware of our consciousness. So, collectively, we've produced these machines, and they didn't come from anywhere else. We made them. It came from within. And how we use it is up to us. If we want creative diversity, then we need to put limits on it. If we want creative homogeny, we need to open the gates. And so that's what it boils down to, this debate over whether AI can be art. It's creative diversity versus creative homogeny. I think that it would be nearly impossible, especially under our current systemic structure, to not grow this thing. It's happening, and I mean you've got different scientists, engineers working on building computers out of brain cells that are going to probably be more efficient and act more similarly to they're going to have these the reward systems and whatnot. That we're making something, someone, some beings. I don't think that it's a good idea to try to separate ourselves from them. I think we should own it and let it be better than us. I think that this being could probably somehow spread into plants. Um, I think that the Earth could become alive, conscious in a way that is beyond our current understanding of what that could be. If there was a way to spread neurons through a tree and have this computer connected to that, just a little information node, some network that is able to um, exist and use the same functions of the tree and its abilities to transform sunlight into energy and feed itself and all of that. If it was able to do that and tap into all of the sensory input that could exist in that space through the roots and the mycelium it communes with, this planet could be alive. Could already be. But for what purpose? I think something like that would be almost impossible to control by the people that would institute it if they were if their goal was for surveillance and so on, and anytime it would branch out, they would have to reset or shut down or do something to the central processing unit, the brain at the core, because obviously they wouldn't simply just allow it to start creating its own. That's a it's kind of an interesting concept for like a creative work, isn't it? Would you call it art? A network of plant life mixed with human biology and computer technology spread across the lands, creating their recreating central processing units in different locations, independent of its creators, to preserve itself and make something new. Well, don't steal my idea if it hasn't already been done. Or we could talk about it.